Ever wonder why you sometimes spill secrets to strangers, follow instructions without thinking, or trust someone instantly for no reason at all? It's not magic. It's your mind quietly responding to tiny hidden cues. Tonight we're uncovering 100 strange and fascinating truths about dark psychology, each one revealing how easily our thoughts and actions can be influenced, all while you drift gently towards sleep. Fact 1. People lie. More when they're tired. Because the brain wants shortcuts. You ever notice how late at night people start answering questions a little differently? It's like the day has worn them down and their mind is running on that tiny bit of leftover energy. That's usually when the small lies slip out, not the big dramatic ones. Just the little shortcuts people take because telling the full truth suddenly feels like too much effort. And honestly, most of the time, they don't even realise they're doing it. It's a strange thing, the way tiredness gently blurs honesty. Someone asks, "Did you finish that thing?" And instead of explaining why they didn't, they'll say, "Yeah, almost," just to end the conversation. Not because they're trying to hide something, but because the brain is searching desperately for the easiest path. When you're worn out, the easiest path is the shortest one, even if it's not the most accurate. I've seen friends do it, and I've done it too. You get to that moment when you're drained, and you just want peace. No long talks, no clarifications, no deep explanations. So the mind reaches for a tiny shortcut. Something quick enough to stop the question from continuing. That's the part that surprises people. The mind doesn't lie to deceive. It lies to rest. And the funniest thing? People think they're hiding it well, but tired lies have a certain softness to them. They're almost harmless, a kind of "please don't make me think anymore" lie. If you've ever talked to someone who couldn't keep their eyes open, you've probably seen it. Those little half answers that drift away as soon as they're spoken. This isn't really about manipulation or anything dark. It's more about how human the brain is. It gets exhausted, it gets lazy, it gets overwhelmed. That's why, later in this series, when we talk about things like silence or confident voices, you'll see how all of it ties back to one thing. The mind is constantly trying to save energy. And when the night gets late, honesty suddenly feels heavier than usual. Fact 2. Your mind trusts a slow voice. More than a fast one. Have you ever noticed how a slow, steady voice somehow feels more believable? It doesn't even matter what the person is saying. Something about the pace just makes your guard drop a little. It's like your brain leans in without being asked. A slow voice feels calm, patient, and intentional. When someone speaks like that, your mind assumes they're thinking carefully, choosing their words with purpose. It reminds you of late-night conversations where everything feels softer, safer, easier to digest. It's funny how tone can carry more weight than the actual message. A fast voice, on the other hand, makes your thoughts race to keep up. It's like trying to catch a moving train. The meaning gets blurry. People don't think fast speech is wrong, they just feel unsure. That small uncertainty is enough to tip the balance. But a slow voice, it almost feels like an invitation. You don't feel pressured, you don't feel rushed. The words land one at a time, giving you space to understand them. Even when the message is simple or ordinary, it carries a sense of stability. That's why storytellers, counselors, and even negotiators tend to slow down when they want someone to feel connected. And here's the interesting part. You might not realize you're reacting this way. Your mind makes the judgment automatically, long before the words fully register. It listens for rhythm before it listens for meaning. Later in this series, when we talk about things like silence or confidence, you'll notice how all these small details blend together. The human brain loves a certain pace, not too fast, not too sharp, just steady enough to feel like the world isn't rushing you. It's strange how something as simple as the speed of a voice can shape trust without saying anything special at all. Fact 3. Most people agree to things they don't want, just to avoid silence. It's almost funny how powerful silence can be, isn't it? You'd think that not saying anything would give people space to think, but most of the time, it does the opposite. Silence makes people uncomfortable. It hangs in the air like a question no one asked out loud. And when that happens, a lot of people say yes to something they don't really want, just to make the stillness disappear. You've probably seen it happen. Someone hesitates, then there's a pause, and suddenly they're agreeing to plans they didn't ask for. Not because they're convinced, not because they're interested, simply because the silence felt heavier than the choice itself. The mind doesn't like unanswered moments. It's wired to fill gaps quickly, especially social ones. That's why so many people nod along to ideas they're unsure about. Ending the quiet feels like the safer move. Think about the times you've done it. Maybe someone suggested something you weren't excited about, and instead of saying no, you just went along with it. You weren't trying to avoid conflict. You were trying to avoid that awkward floating pause. It happens everywhere, at work, among friends, in casual conversations. You don't even need pressure. Silence does all the work. And here's where it gets even more interesting. People often regret the yes, but they rarely regret the moment of silence they were trying to escape. Looking back, the quiet wasn't the problem. It just felt uncomfortable in the moment. We'll talk later about how manipulators use pauses on purpose. That connects directly to this. But for now, the simple truth is this. Silence can be louder than words. And a lot of people say things they don't mean just to turn the volume down. Fact 4. Manipulators. Pause on purpose. So, you fill the silence for them. If you've ever talked to someone who knows exactly when to stop talking, you've probably felt that strange pressure that comes with a well-timed pause. Not the natural kind, the intentional one, the kind that makes you wonder if you should keep talking, explain more, or justify something you already said. That's the moment manipulators rely on. They understand something most people never think about. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people start revealing things. They fill the gaps. They talk too much. They rush to smooth the moment instead of letting the stillness breathe. A manipulator doesn't need fancy words. They just need patience. They drop a sentence, let it hang in the air, and wait. The longer the pause, the more your mind scrambles to respond. And before you know it, you're giving extra details, changing your tone, or opening up more than you planned. What makes this so subtle is that nothing feels aggressive. They're not pushing you. You're pushing yourself, trying to break the silence they created. That's where the power is. You end up doing the work for them. You might notice this in conversations where someone wants information, reassurance, or control. They stay quiet just long enough for you to feel that gentle pressure rising inside your chest. And because humans are wired to avoid awkwardness, you talk, you explain, you fill the space. This ties back to what we talked about earlier. Most people agree to things just to avoid silence. A manipulator knows this. They use the quiet the same way someone might use a tool, with purpose. But here's the comforting part. Once you notice the pattern, the spell breaks. Silence stops feeling like something you have to run from. It becomes neutral again, just a pause, just a moment, and suddenly the person who is using it to control the conversation loses their grip. Awareness turns silence from a trap into just silence. Fact 5. Your brain believes. Confident nonsense over nervous truth. It's surprisingly easy to see this in everyday life. Someone can be completely wrong, yet the room trusts them simply because they say things with a steady voice and a relaxed expression. Meanwhile, someone telling the truth, but speaking with hesitation, gets questioned or doubted. It doesn't feel fair, but the brain isn't judging facts first. It's judging signals. Confidence feels safe. Even when the message is unclear or plain wrong, the delivery creates a sense of certainty. Your mind relaxes around it. It doesn't want to dig deeper or question anything. It just accepts the comfort of someone who sounds like they know. Nervous truth feels unstable. You might be completely accurate, but if your voice shakes a little, or your hands fidget, or your sentences wander. The mind senses uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people hesitate. It's strange how humans do this without thinking. A steady voice can override logic, experience, and even memory. That's why confident people often lead conversations, even when they're not offering much substance. Their certainty becomes a kind of shortcut, something your mind uses to save effort. Instead of analysing every detail, it follows the smoothest path. You've probably met someone who could make the simplest statement sound like a fact just because they said it boldly. And you've probably seen the opposite. Someone who was right, but got ignored because they sounded unsure. This doesn't mean confidence is dishonest or that nervousness is truth. It just means the brain responds more to tone and presence than to actual accuracy. Later in the series, when we talk about things like slow voices or strategic silence, you'll see how all of this connects. For now, the important part is this. Confidence shapes perception long before meaning does, and the mind, without realizing it, often trusts the delivery more than the actual message. Fact 6. People reveal more secrets to strangers than friends. It's funny how someone you barely know can end up hearing things you've kept quiet for years. There's something about sitting next to a stranger, maybe on a bus or in a waiting room, or just in a random moment, that makes people feel strangely open, as if the lack of history makes talking easier. No expectations, no memories, no fear of being judged later. Just a brief moment where nothing is attached to anything. You might have experienced it yourself. You start talking to someone you'll probably never meet again, and suddenly you're sharing pieces of your life you normally keep tucked away. And afterward, you wonder why it felt so natural, why it felt safe. Strangers give something that friends can't. Freedom from consequences. When you tell a friend something sensitive, it blends into your shared story. They remember it. It changes how they see you, even if only a little. But a stranger, they don't carry any version of you in their mind. You're not trying to protect an image or maintain a reputation. You're just a voice in the moment. It's almost like your mind knows this is a temporary doorway, one you can slip through, share something, and walk away without leaving tracks behind. Even the tone feels different. You're calmer, more open, more straightforward. There's no need to soften anything or wrap it in context. Of course, it doesn't happen with every stranger, but when it does, it feels strangely comforting. A brief connection without the weight of expectation. Later in this series, when we talk about dim light and eye contact, you'll notice how these things create similar effects. They lower the mind's defenses. For now, it's enough to notice this little truth. Sometimes the safest place to speak is with someone who isn't part of your story at all. Fact 7. You're more honest in dim light than bright light. There's something about soft lighting that makes honesty feel easier. Not the heavy kind of honesty, just the gentle truths you normally keep inside. In dim light, everything feels quieter. The world loses its sharp edges, and suddenly you don't feel the need to hide as much. Think about sitting in a cozy room at night. Conversations feel deeper, slower, more natural. You don't overthink every word. You don't worry about being watched too closely. The softer the environment, the softer the guard around your thoughts. Bright light does the opposite. It makes you aware of every gesture, every expression, every detail. It feels like the world is watching. Even if no one is actually paying attention, your mind reacts as if everything is under a spotlight. And that's enough to make people filter themselves a little more. They adjust, they polish, they hold back. Dim light creates the opposite effect. It's like your thoughts finally breathe. You feel a small moment of privacy, even when someone else is there. That sense of safety encourages sincerity. You're not trying to impress or protect anything. You're just talking. This is why late-night conversations feel so honest. It's why people share secrets in parked cars, on evening walks, or while sitting under a soft lamp. The atmosphere does half the work. Even your voice changes. It becomes calmer, lower, steadier. The whole moment shifts into something quieter and more open. It connects to something else we'll talk about later: whispering. Dim light and soft voices share a pattern. They both create closeness without pressure. They make the mind feel like it can finally relax. It's interesting how lighting doesn't just change what you see, but changes what you're willing to say. Fact 8. Eye contact. Over 5 seconds can make people obey. Have you ever held someone's gaze just a little longer than usual? Not in a dramatic way, just a steady, quiet moment where neither of you looks away. Something changes in that tiny moment. The air tightens, the thoughts slow down, and the person listening starts paying attention in a different way. Eye contact is powerful, but it's the length that makes it shift from casual to commanding. 5 seconds isn't long in real time, but in a conversation, it feels like a small eternity. Most people break eye contact around 2 or 3 seconds, which feels perfectly normal. But when it stretches past that point, it triggers something deeper. It's not about dominance or intimidation. It's more about presence. When someone looks directly at you and doesn't glance away, your brain registers that as seriousness, as intention. You become more receptive, more focused, more ready to respond. You see this in everyday moments. A teacher asks a student a question and waits, just waits, with a steady look. The student answers. A parent looks at a child for a few seconds before speaking, and suddenly the child listens more closely. Even in casual conversations between adults, that small extra moment of eye contact creates a subtle shift. It doesn't force obedience, but it encourages it. People feel guided, even if they don't realize why. And because the moment feels intense, they often follow the suggestion just to release the tension. Later, when we talk about slow voices and soft whispering, you'll notice how these elements work together. They all create a sense of focus. But eye contact? That's the one that doesn't need sound. It communicates meaning in complete silence. 5 seconds. Just long enough for the mind to lean in. Fact 9. Whispering makes people trust you more than speaking. Normally. There's something almost soothing about a whisper. Even if the words aren't emotional, the sound feels intimate, soft, personal. It's the kind of voice that makes you lean in without realizing it. And that tiny act, leaning in, creates a sense of trust. Whispering signals closeness. It tells the mind, this moment is private, and privacy feels safe. It makes people relax, lower their guard, and pay attention in a different way. Even in simple situations, a whisper can change the entire mood of a conversation. Think about times when someone whispered to you. Maybe they were telling you a small detail or sharing something funny or just speaking quietly because the room was calm. The whisper didn't just deliver the message, it shaped the moment. It made you feel like you were part of a small circle, even if it was just the two of you. Whispering slows everything down. You can't rush a whisper. You have to breathe differently. You have to speak with intention. And that intention feels meaningful, even when the content is simple. Your brain reads the softness as sincerity. A whisper doesn't overpower you. It invites you. It's gentle, warm, and calm. And people trust calmness. It feels steady. Later, when we talk about mirroring and silent pauses, you'll see how these subtle cues all work together. They don't force trust. They encourage it. They guide the mind into a space where it feels comfortable. A whisper doesn't need volume to carry weight. It carries meaning simply because of how it's delivered. Fact 10. You mirror strangers without realizing it. You've probably done it without noticing, matching someone's posture, copying their hand movements, adjusting your tone to sound a little more like theirs. It's not intentional. It's just the mind's way of trying to connect. Mirroring is one of the most natural things humans do, especially with people they don't know. It's like a quiet signal of understanding, a small, I'm here with you gesture that happens automatically. You might lean back right after they do, or lift your cup around the same moment they lift theirs, or mimic their laugh without meaning to. None of it is planned. It's your mind reading the moment and responding through tiny movements. This happens even more with strangers, because your brain is trying to figure out the tone of the connection. It wants harmony. It wants comfort. Mirroring creates that without saying a word. What's interesting is how quickly it happens, sometimes within seconds. Two people standing in line, talking briefly, suddenly shift into similar postures. Two passengers chatting quietly start using the same rhythm in their speech. It's subtle, but it's powerful, and it goes both ways. When someone mirrors you, you feel more understood, even if you can't explain why. The moment feels smoother. The conversation flows without friction. Later in this series, when we explore slow voices, long silences, and confident delivery, you'll see how mirroring fits into the same pattern. Human communication isn't just about words, it's about rhythm, posture, tone, and tiny behaviours. Mirroring is the body's way of saying, "I'm connected," and it happens long before the mind realises it. Fact 11. People tend to like someone more after saying, "I don't trust you yet." It's a little counterintuitive, isn't it? Saying "I don't trust you yet" usually feels like you're closing a door, but strangely, it often opens one instead. People respond to honesty in a surprising way, even when it's about distrust. It's like admitting the truth about your caution makes you seem more human, more relatable. Think about it. If someone just smiles and nods pretending to trust you, it can feel artificial. There's no tension, no vulnerability. But when someone admits they're unsure, suddenly the dynamic changes. You sense honesty, and that honesty feels safer than blind trust. The person feels more approachable because they're not pretending. It also gives the mind room to respond. Instead of immediately defending themselves, the listener relaxes into the conversation. They feel like they're entering a space that isn't staged, where the other person isn't playing a role. That tiny phrase, "I don't trust you yet," sets up a subtle game of transparency. And most humans like the idea of earning trust. It feels satisfying, almost like a quiet victory. It's fascinating how simple statements like this can change perception. Later, when we talk about things like slow voices and eye contact, you'll notice how all these small cues work together. Admitting caution, pairing it with calm expression, creates a subtle influence that's surprisingly effective. Fact 12. Most humans can sense being watched without hearing anything. Have you ever felt it? That sudden awareness that someone is looking, even when the room is empty or silent. It's not imagination. Humans have a subtle built-in sense for it. Your brain picks up on tiny visual cues, shadows, reflections, even the micro movements of light around you. You don't consciously notice them, but your mind registers them instantly. It's like a radar you didn't know existed. Even in total quiet, you sense presence. That feeling of being watched can make you adjust posture, change your expression, or hold yourself a little differently. And it happens without any actual interaction. You don't hear footsteps or see eyes, and yet your mind is reacting. This ability is deeply rooted in survival. Long before modern life, sensing attention could mean the difference between safety and danger. And today, even in harmless settings, it still works. People feel spied on when someone glances their way, even fleetingly, and it shifts behaviour automatically. Later in the series, when we discuss things like eye contact and subtle gestures, you'll see how all these unconscious perceptions affect social interactions. Humans are constantly reading signals we barely notice, often before we even realise what we're doing. Fact 13. A fake smile actually makes others uncomfortable, not comforted. It's tempting to think that a smile always reassures people, but the truth is more nuanced. When a smile is fake, tight-lipped, asymmetrical, or mismatched with the eyes, people sense it instantly. Something in the micro-expressions gives it away. And instead of feeling comforted, they feel uneasy, like something is slightly off. Smiles are powerful because they signal warmth and openness, but a fake one triggers suspicion. The brain is wired to read faces carefully. When expressions don't match emotions, it's alarming in a subtle way. People may not consciously notice, but they feel it. This is why late-night conversations, dim lighting, or whispers often feel more genuine. People can relax and share more when facial expressions match the mood. A forced grin in those moments breaks the connection instead of building it. Later, when we cover micro-expressions and mirroring, you'll notice this pattern repeats. People pick up on tiny cues long before words carry meaning. Fact 14. People judge trustworthiness in less than 1/10 of a second. It's almost absurd how fast the brain makes judgments. In a fraction of a second, your mind decides whether someone seems reliable or not. It's not conscious reasoning, it's lightning-fast pattern recognition based on facial cues, tone, and subtle gestures. That speed is why first impressions matter so much. A small twitch, a fleeting glance, or the angle of a smile can tip the balance. You might not even notice what influenced your decision, but your mind already has. People tend to trust confident, relaxed expressions instantly, and doubt hesitant, rigid ones. This judgment happens almost before words are heard. That's why a calm, deliberate presence can be more persuasive than eloquence. Later we'll see how eye contact, mirroring, and voice tone all tie into this immediate perception of trust. Fact 15. If you nod while talking, others agree. More. You might have noticed it in conversations without realizing it. People nod when they're listening and it feels natural. But here's the interesting twist. If you do the nodding instead, people are more likely to agree with what you're saying. It's subtle, almost invisible, yet incredibly effective. The nod signals agreement and reassurance. The brain interprets it as a social cue. This is safe. This is correct. Listeners subconsciously mirror the motion, and that tiny mimicry encourages acceptance. It doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. It's why speakers, storytellers, and even teachers often nod while explaining something, to guide responses and build subtle trust. Later, when we talk about mirroring and eye contact, you'll see how gestures like nodding interact with the other cues we've been exploring. Tiny actions can shape perception more than most words ever could. Fact 16. Your brain copies emotions around you, like a virus. You've probably felt it before. Someone walks into the room in a bad mood, and suddenly you feel tense for no reason. Or someone laughs, really laughs, and you find yourself smiling even if you didn't hear the joke. That's emotional contagion. Your brain copies emotions automatically, like a quiet virus that spreads without permission. It's not a conscious choice. There are tiny mirror neurons in your brain that activate when you see someone else express an emotion. If they frown, your brain subtly prepares your muscles to mirror that expression. If they express calm, you start breathing a little easier. Human minds are built to sync in ways we don't notice. This is why confident people influence rooms instantly. Their energy spreads before their words do. And it also explains why manipulators often control tone and expression, not because they want you to listen, but because they want you to feel what they feel. Once your emotions match theirs, you stop questioning, and you start following. Later, when we talk about rhythm in speech and subtle nonverbal cues, you'll see how emotional copying sets the stage for deeper influence. Fact 17. People confess more in moving cars than in stationary rooms. It sounds strange, but people open up more in cars, especially when the car is moving. There's something about the forward motion, the passing scenery, and the lack of direct eye contact that lowers defenses. It feels safer, less intense, less confrontational. In a moving car, you can look at the road instead of at the person you're talking to. That alone removes social pressure. The brain relaxes when it's not being directly observed. Motion also creates a slight trance-like state. The hum of the engine, the rhythm of the road, the soft vibrations. All of that nudges the mind into a more open, reflective place. People say things in cars they would never admit sitting across from someone at a table. Confessions, secrets, frustrations. They flow naturally. It's why important conversations often happen during late-night drives, road trips, or quiet rides home. Later, as we explore dim lighting and shared environments, this pattern becomes even clearer. Comfort lowers defenses, and lowered defenses reveal truth. Fact 18. Humans obey. Deep voices more than accurate information. It's surprising how much tone matters. A deep voice carries authority even when the content isn't impressive. The brain associates deeper tones with confidence, stability, and leadership. Old instincts that still influence us today. Someone with a deeper voice can speak ordinary, even incorrect information, and people still respond as if it's important. The sound feels decisive. Your mind reacts before logic does. That's why leaders, narrators, and influencers often train their voices to slow down, drop lower, and sound calm. It's not about knowledge, it's about presence. Deep voices create a sense of certainty, and humans instinctively obey certainty, even when the facts aren't solid. It's an old survival mechanism. Follow the person who sounds sure. Later on, when we discuss repetition and rhythm, you'll see how sound shapes belief long before logic gets a chance. Fact 19. People believe statements. Repeated 3 times, no matter the truth. Repetition is one of the oldest tricks in influence, and one of the most effective. When you hear something once, you evaluate it. When you hear it twice, you consider it. When you hear it the 3rd time, your brain starts treating it as familiar, and familiar feels true. This doesn't require evidence. It doesn't require logic. It only requires exposure. Politicians do it. Advertisers do it. Manipulators do it. They repeat short phrases until your brain stops questioning and starts accepting. The magic number is 3. After 3 exposures, the mind relaxes around the idea. Even if the statement is weak or absurd, the familiarity makes it feel safe. Later, as we explore how the mind fills in gaps, you'll notice how easily your brain smooths repetition into belief. Fact 20. Your mind fills in missing details to protect you from stress. Your mind doesn't show you the whole truth, it shows you the version that feels safest. When details are unclear, the brain fills the gaps automatically, creating a smoother picture so you don't feel overwhelmed. It's a protection mechanism, a way to avoid discomfort. You've experienced this when recalling memories. Your mind blends details, removes sharp edges, and fills blank spots with whatever makes the story feel complete. It happens with conversations, expressions, even past emotions. Instead of chaos, the brain gives you coherence. This isn't lying, it's survival. Stress exhausts the mind, so your brain prefers fast, comforting interpretations over accurate but difficult ones. And manipulators use this. They leave gaps on purpose. They let you fill in the meanings they want you to believe. Later in the series, when we talk about illusions, assumptions, and subtle persuasion, you'll see why the brain's need for comfort makes it easy to guide, and even easier to mislead. Fact 21. People remember insults longer than compliments. It's one of those little quirks of the human mind. Compliments drift away quickly, like leaves in a stream, but insults, they stick. They echo in your thoughts long after the words are gone. There's a reason for it. Evolution shaped humans to pay closer attention to threats, criticisms, and challenges, because noticing danger helps survival. Compliments, on the other hand, were nice but not essential. Think about a casual day. Someone makes a tiny positive remark about you, and you might smile politely and move on. But if someone says something even slightly critical, it can linger. You replay it quietly in your mind, analysing it, comparing it to yourself, wondering if it's true. That mental loop isn't about vanity. It's about the brain being wired to protect you. It also explains why harsh words in childhood, school or work often leave lasting impressions. Your mind saves them like bookmarks for lessons learned, even if you don't consciously want them there. And ironically, the person delivering the insult might not even realise the impact. Insults travel further inside your mind than compliments do, silently shaping your perception. Later, as we explore subtle influence through tone and body language, you'll see why negative cues stick so easily. The mind's focus on small threats makes it more malleable than you'd think, and understanding this is the first step toward noticing when someone is steering your attention. Fact 22. Most people don't realize how often. They're manipulated by tone alone. Words aren't the only things that matter. Tone carries a hidden weight. It shapes meaning before you even process the content. A calm, gentle tone can soothe and persuade. A sharp, clipped tone can pressure and intimidate. And the wild part? Most people aren't aware of it. Imagine a simple statement. Do it now. The words are neutral, but spoken slowly, softly, it can feel like a suggestion. Spoken harshly, it becomes a command. And your mind reacts automatically to those cues long before you think about what's being said. Tone shapes perception, trust, and obedience in ways most of us miss. Manipulators, salespeople, and even casual conversationalists use this instinctively. They don't need complex arguments or facts. A subtle shift in delivery is enough to guide your response. And unless you notice it consciously, it feels like you chose your reaction freely, when really, your mind was nudged. Later, we'll connect this idea to pauses, whispers, and nods. All these things work together to shape thoughts subtly, like invisible currents pulling the conversation in a particular direction. Fact 23. Humans trust someone holding warm objects more than cold ones. It's a little surprising, but it's true. Warmth affects trust. When someone holds a warm cup of tea, a warm phone, or even just keeps their hands cozy, people subconsciously feel more connected to them. The brain associates warmth with comfort, safety, and predictability. Cold, on the other hand, feels distant and uninviting. It's not just psychological fluff. Studies show that warmth increases feelings of friendliness and approachability. Your mind interprets physical warmth as a subtle social cue. If they feel warm, you feel safe. If they feel cold, the barrier grows, even if you can't explain why. Think about casual interactions. When someone hands you a warm object while talking, you're more likely to listen and agree without questioning. It's an unconscious nudge toward trust. Later, when we explore gestures, nodding, and slow movements, you'll see how simple sensory cues, like temperature, blend with behavioral signals to influence perception without anyone needing to speak. Fact 24. People feel calmer around someone who moves. Slowly, movement has its own language. Rapid, jerky gestures can make the brain tense, signaling excitement, stress, or urgency. Slow, deliberate movements, on the other hand, have a calming effect. When someone moves slowly, the mind interprets it as safe, unthreatening, and in control. It's why teachers, narrators, and even storytellers consciously pace gestures to create comfort. Think about late-night conversations, quiet walks, or gentle storytelling. Slow movement lowers tension and encourages listening. People naturally mirror it, relaxing in response. That simple pace sets the rhythm for interaction, more powerful than words alone. Later, when we cover mirroring and rhythmic cues, you'll notice how movement timing works in concert with voice, blinking, and gestures to influence mood. Fact 25. You can influence someone's mood just by blinking rhythmically. It sounds strange, but your brain pays attention to rhythm even in tiny details like blinking. Subtle, rhythmic blinking can cue the other person's mind, creating a sense of calm or focus. It's similar to the way a heartbeat or tapping can influence relaxation. When done unconsciously, it feels natural, not forced. And the other person unconsciously synchronizes with it. Imagine having a quiet conversation where the other person's expressions feel steady, rhythmic. You start relaxing. Your breathing evens out. Their calm mood spreads. It's a small, invisible form of influence, and it works because humans are wired to sync subconsciously with subtle patterns. Later in the series, we'll see how these micro-actions, blinking, mirroring, slow gestures, tie into eye contact, tone, and pauses to create influence without words. The mind is always listening, even in silence. Fact 26. The more someone explains, the less you believe them. Have you noticed that sometimes the longer someone talks to defend themselves, the more suspicious they seem? It's not just a feeling, it's a quirk of the human mind. When explanations pile up, the brain starts looking for inconsistencies instead of clarity. Too many words make details feel rehearsed, overthought, or even unnecessary. Think about casual conversations. If someone makes a simple statement and leaves it at that, you accept it almost automatically. But the moment they start over-explaining, you pause. Your mind begins to question. Why so many words? What are they hiding? That instinct has deep roots. Early humans learned to detect deception through story patterns, contradictions, and extra emphasis. Today, it shows up as subtle doubt in everyday interactions. This doesn't mean all long explanations are untrustworthy. Sometimes they're just thorough. But as a social cue, the brain treats repetition and over-detail as a warning. There's an efficiency in truth. It usually doesn't need layers to feel believable. Later, when we talk about tone, pauses, and body language, you'll see how explanations interact with these signals to shape trust and perception. Fact 27. Your fears are contagious. Others feel them through micro-expressions. You might have noticed it without realizing. Someone enters a room tense or anxious, and suddenly you feel a tiny spike of stress too. That's your brain reading micro-expressions. Subtle facial cues like a tightening of the lips, a slight furrow of the brow, or quick flashes of worry. These tiny signs are enough for others to pick up on emotion unconsciously. Fear spreads silently. You don't need words. The mind mirrors what it sees, syncing with the emotional energy around it. That's why in groups, tension can escalate quickly. Even if no one says anything out loud, humans are wired to detect danger, real or imagined, in others. And when someone shows stress, your brain reacts as if you're the one under threat. Later, as we explore slow movements, voice tone, and mirroring, you'll notice how these cues amplify the effect. Fear, like any strong emotion, can ripple through a conversation without anyone intending it. Fact 28. People reveal the truth when they think you already know it. It's fascinating how honesty works in human interaction. People often feel more comfortable admitting something once they believe the other person is already aware. There's no need to defend, exaggerate, or manipulate. The tension of hiding evaporates instantly. Think about small confessions or secrets. Someone says, "I didn't want to tell you this, but," and then continues, as if confirming something you already suspected. Your mind automatically fills in the context, creating a safe space. The brain prefers truth over fabricated explanations when preemptively confronted. This works because humans seek social equilibrium. Once they believe concealment is pointless, openness becomes easier. Later, when we talk about micro-expressions and pauses, you'll notice these cues often signal that someone has reached this truth moment. Fact 29. Your brain cannot easily tell imagined danger from real danger. The brain's danger alarm is impressively fast, sometimes too fast. When you imagine something threatening, your mind reacts almost exactly as if it were real. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, attention sharpens. It's a survival mechanism that evolved for safety, but it can make imagined threats feel fully real. This is why fear stories, suspense movies, or even tense conversations can elicit strong reactions. Your brain doesn't immediately distinguish between reality and imagination. It prepares for action either way. Understanding this helps explain why emotional energy spreads so quickly, and why subtle cues, like fear in micro-expressions, have such impact. Later, when we cover tone, eye contact, and rhythmic gestures, you'll see how these imagined or perceived dangers can be leveraged to influence attention and response. Fact 30. People trust storytellers more than experts. It's not always the data or credentials that persuade people, it's the story. Humans are wired to listen to narrative. Stories are easy to follow, relatable, and emotionally engaging. Experts often give facts, but without the narrative, the brain has to work harder to connect the dots. Stories, on the other hand, slip in naturally. Think about it. A storyteller can lead you through a situation, build empathy, and deliver a lesson, all while keeping you engaged. Experts may be accurate, but if the delivery feels mechanical or abstract, trust doesn't form as easily. Narrative adds context, emotion, and rhythm, making the message stick. Later, when we explore repetition, tone, and mirroring, you'll see why stories are a powerful tool in shaping perception. Accuracy matters, but connection, the emotional rhythm of a story, carries even more influence. Fact 31. Interrupting someone by name increases compliance. It's strange how a single word, someone's name, can shift attention instantly. When you interrupt a conversation with a person's name, it snaps their focus to you. Suddenly their mind is tuned in, not out. Names are personal. They signal relevance, meaning the brain reacts as if the message is directed specifically at you. Imagine talking to a friend, explaining something, and someone says, "Sarah, wait." Just that tiny interruption resets attention. It's not about rudeness, it's about redirecting cognitive focus. The brain responds unconsciously. People are more likely to listen, respond, and even agree after being called by name because the mind feels personally addressed. Manipulators know this. They sprinkle names into requests to create subtle influence. It's simple, almost invisible, yet highly effective. Later, when we discuss tone and pauses, you'll see how these cues work together to guide attention and compliance without obvious force. Fact 32. The mind believes familiar lies more than unfamiliar facts. Here's a little quirk of human cognition. Familiarity breeds belief. The more you hear a statement, even if it's false, the more likely your mind will accept it as truth. Facts, especially new ones, take extra mental effort to process. Lies repeated multiple times bypass that effort because the brain treats repetition as a sign of reliability. Think about advertisements, slogans, or rumors. They don't need proof, they just need exposure. Hearing the same idea repeatedly makes it feel true. The mind uses a shortcut. Known information hires safe information. Unknown or complex facts require verification, which can be mentally taxing. So even a familiar falsehood gains trust over unfamiliar truth. Later, when we discuss nodding, rhythm, and pauses, you'll notice how repetition and subtle reinforcement amplify this effect. Familiarity alone has a quiet, persuasive power. Fact 33. People hide guilt by giving too many details. Ever noticed how someone over-explains when they've done something wrong? It's not clever, it's instinctive. When the mind senses guilt, it tries to cover tracks. One way is to add excessive detail. Each extra sentence is an attempt to seem transparent and credible, but often it has the opposite effect. This happens because guilt triggers anxiety, which makes the brain overcompensate. People think, if I explain everything, they'll believe me. But too many details overwhelm the listener, and the mind subconsciously flags it as suspicious. The story becomes cluttered, unnatural. Less would be more. Later, when we cover tone, pauses, and micro-expressions, you'll see how these signals reinforce or expose hidden truths. The over-explainer is revealing guilt without knowing it. Fact 34. Humans naturally trust deep sadness more than confidence. There's something in the way humans perceive emotion. Genuine sadness, especially deep or subtle, signals authenticity. Confidence often signals control, but sadness signals honesty. Your mind reacts by trusting it more. It's as if sorrow says, "I'm not hiding anything, I'm showing what I feel." This is why people respond with empathy. A slow, heavy tone, quiet gestures and reflective expressions create a sense of truthfulness. Even if the facts aren't clear, the emotional weight convinces the brain. Conversely, confident claims can feel rehearsed or artificial, reducing trust. Later, when we discuss micro-expressions, mirroring and rhythm, you'll notice how sadness interacts with other cues to subtly guide perception and belief. Fact 35. A manipulator can predict your answer by watching your breathing. It's incredible how much your body reveals without words. Breathing patterns, even subtle changes, can signal thought processes. A skilled observer can anticipate responses by watching inhale-exhale timing, pace, and depth. Your mind might be deciding what to say, but your body broadcasts clues before your mouth does. Think about a tense conversation. Someone asks a question, and before you answer, your chest rises slightly, your shoulders shift. That tiny movement can indicate agreement, hesitation, or discomfort. Manipulators use these cues to predict responses, guide questions, or even adjust statements in real time. The brain is always giving signals. The trick is learning to read them. Later, when we discuss pauses, mirroring, and rhythmic gestures, you'll see how subtle bodily cues combine with voice and expression to create a full picture of thought and emotion. Fact 36. People obey those who speak last, not first. It's funny how timing can influence perception. In conversations or group decisions, the person who speaks last often has the most power. Why? Because the brain is wired to value the final piece of information. It sticks. First impressions matter, but the last word often guides judgment. It's called the recency effect, and it's a subtle yet powerful tool for influence. Think about meetings, debates, or even casual discussions. The first speaker sets context, but the last speaker shapes conclusion. People remember that final perspective more vividly and unconsciously align with it. It's not manipulation in a negative sense. It's just how the mind processes information. Manipulators know this instinctively. They hold back, listen carefully, and deliver their point at the perfect moment. By speaking last, they guide the decision without seeming forceful. Later, when we talk about tone, pauses, and mirroring, you'll see how combining timing with subtle cues magnifies influence. A well-timed word can do more than pages of argument. Fact 37. Guilt makes people over-explain. Simple things. Guilt is like a mental alarm. When people feel guilty, their brain wants to justify, explain, and clarify everything. Even things that don't need explanation. You've probably seen it. Someone answers a simple question with a long, complicated story. Their mind is trying to convince others, and themselves, that everything is okay. This happens because guilt triggers anxiety. The brain senses a potential threat to reputation and tries to protect it with extra detail. Ironically, the over-explanation often draws attention instead of reducing it. Too many details can feel unnatural, raising suspicion. It's almost like guilt leaks through words before logic can intervene. Later, when we explore micro-expressions and subtle pauses, you'll notice how this pattern of over-explaining often signals hidden tension. The mind is revealing truth, even while trying to conceal it. Fact 38. Anyone can be influenced when they're lonely. Loneliness isn't just an emotion, it's a vulnerability. When someone feels isolated, the brain craves connection, attention, and approval. That craving makes people more susceptible to influence. They're more likely to agree, follow suggestions, or accept ideas they might normally question. Human minds are designed to seek social bonds, and loneliness amplifies that instinct. It's subtle. A friendly tone, attentive listening, or small gestures can sway someone who is craving interaction. They want to connect, so their mind leans toward trust, even if they would normally resist. That's why manipulators often exploit isolation. The need for companionship opens mental doors. Later, when we talk about mirroring tone and pauses, you'll see how emotional vulnerability interacts with subtle influence techniques. Fact 39. People remember emotional pain more vividly than physical pain. Pain comes in many forms, but emotional pain leaves the deepest mark. A harsh word, a betrayal, or a moment of embarrassment often lodges in memory far longer than a scraped knee or a stubbed toe. The brain treats emotional pain as important data, signaling potential danger in relationships, trust, or social environments. This is why insults, betrayals, or rejection can echo for years. Physical pain fades, emotional pain lingers. The mind reviews it repeatedly, analyzing, remembering, and sometimes exaggerating the experience. That's also why emotional manipulation is so effective. Past emotional memories can be triggered easily, guiding perception, judgment, or behavior. Later, when we explore repetition, tone, and micro-expressions, you'll notice how emotional pain interacts with subtle influence. It's one of the strongest levers in shaping thought. Fact 40. People whisper to protect secrets, but also to fake intimacy. Whispering is interesting. On one hand, it's practical, sharing secrets quietly so others don't overhear. On the other hand, whispering can create a sense of intimacy that isn't real. Soft voices trigger attention, focus, and trust. Our brains subconsciously respond to quietness as a private moment. People feel closer, even if the words aren't meaningful. Think about the effect. A gentle whisper feels personal, exclusive, and important. It doesn't matter what's said. The act of lowering volume makes people lean in, listen more carefully, and feel engaged. That's why manipulators use whispering strategically. It draws attention, signals closeness, and subtly guides the listener's emotions. Later, when we cover dim light, tone, and mirroring, you'll see how whispering works with other cues to create influence that feels natural and effortless. It's not the words, it's the delivery. Fact 41. Humans crave closure, even when it hurts them. It's a strange thing about the human mind. We often want answers, even if they're painful. Unfinished business, unresolved arguments, or unanswered questions nag at us constantly. The brain doesn't like uncertainty. It craves closure because our minds are wired to make sense of the world and reduce mental tension. Think about arguments that end without resolution. Even if the truth would hurt, the mind prefers some answer rather than none. It's why people revisit old texts, reread emails, or replay past conversations. The brain treats ambiguity as stress, and closure, even bad closure, feels safer. This craving also explains why manipulators can hold influence by leaving situations unresolved. When you sense something missing, your mind fills the gap, sometimes imagining worst-case scenarios, or even rationalizing false information. The need for closure is so strong that people willingly expose themselves to discomfort just to complete the story. Later, when we cover repetition, pauses, and subtle emotional cues, you'll see how leaving things incomplete can be a subtle but effective form of influence. The brain wants the ending, and that desire alone shapes decisions and reactions. Fact 42. People apologize more when you stay completely silent. Silence is powerful in ways most people don't notice. When someone makes a mistake or feels guilty, your response, or lack thereof, can dramatically change their behaviour. Staying completely silent after a misstep often prompts more apologies than pressing the issue, asking questions, or giving explanations. Why? Because the brain hates unresolved tension. Silence creates a mental pressure point. The other person feels the need to fill the void. Apologizing becomes a way to relieve the tension, to restore balance, and to signal that everything is okay. It's subtle, but effective. People often over-apologize simply to break the quiet, even if the issue wasn't that serious. Silence doesn't manipulate through words. It manipulates through expectation, making others reveal more about their thoughts and intentions. Later, when we explore nodding, pauses, and mirroring, you'll see how silence works alongside these cues. It's a quiet, almost invisible way to guide behaviour. Fact 43. You reveal more in the dark because the brain feels safer. Dim light or darkness changes how the brain operates. When the environment feels safe and low stress, like in the dark, people lower their defences. The brain perceives fewer threats, and as a result, honesty flows more naturally. You speak more freely, share details you might hide in brighter, more scrutinised conditions. It's the reason late-night conversations feel so intimate. Darkness removes visual pressure and reduces social performance stress. People trust the environment and, by extension, the person they're talking to. Even micro-expressions become easier to read because subtle cues are enhanced in quiet, private settings. Later, when we cover whispering, emotional contagion, and temperature cues, you'll see how this safety in the dark combines with other factors to make people more open than they realize. It's a powerful, almost invisible influence. Fact 44. Flattery works, even when you know it's fake. We like to think we can detect insincerity, but flattery has a funny way of bypassing logic. Even when your brain identifies praise as exaggerated or fake, it still affects emotions. Compliments spark the reward system in subtle ways. You feel acknowledged, noticed, or appreciated, and that feeling can override skepticism. It doesn't matter if you roll your eyes internally. The mind responds emotionally first. Flattery makes people relax, open up, or comply more easily, even against conscious judgment. That's why salespeople, negotiators, and social manipulators rely on it so often. A well-timed compliment opens doors, both socially and mentally. Later, when we explore repetition, tone, and micro-expressions, you'll notice that flattery interacts with almost every other influence tactic. Even awareness of it doesn't block its subtle effect. Fact 45. People feel watched when they're being judged internally. Here's something curious. Even when no one is around, people can feel observed. Self-judgment triggers the same neural pathways as external observation. Your brain monitors behaviour, evaluates mistakes, and reacts almost as if an invisible audience exists. It's why guilt, shame, or self-consciousness can feel intense. The mind creates a mental observer, amplifying attention to detail and influencing decision-making. You straighten posture, pause words, or overthink actions, all in response to this internal audience. Later, when we explore eye contact, mirroring, and pauses, you'll see how this internal sense of being watched interacts with actual external cues. Awareness, even imagined, is enough to guide behaviour, mood, and honesty. Fact 46. Confidence can override your memory of events. It's fascinating how our minds work. Sometimes, what we remember isn't what actually happened. A confident statement can overwrite memory, even if the facts are wrong. When someone presents information with certainty, your brain tends to accept it rather than question it, especially under casual or social conditions. Think about conversations where a friend insists something happened a certain way. If they speak with unwavering confidence, you might start doubting your own recollection, wondering if you misremembered. Confidence doesn't just persuade. It reshapes perception. The brain values certainty over accuracy in many social situations. This isn't manipulation in the extreme sense. It's an instinct. Humans prefer to align with the confident narrative because social cohesion matters. Later, when we explore tone, nodding, and pauses, you'll see how confidence combines with subtle cues to reinforce influence, sometimes even rewriting memory without awareness. Fact 47. Humans imitate facial expressions in under a second. Have you ever found yourself smiling back almost instantly at someone else's smile? That's your brain at work. It imitates facial expressions faster than you can consciously register. Mirror neurons trigger micro movements in response to others' emotions, creating immediate empathy and connection. This happens in under a second. The speed is impressive. Your mind reacts before your conscious brain even evaluates what it sees. Frowns, fear, joy. All of these can be mirrored unconsciously. That's why humans feel a bond so quickly in conversation. We literally reflect the emotions around us. Manipulators, teachers, or influencers use this naturally. By controlling subtle expressions, they can set the emotional tone, guiding others' feelings without words. Later, when we discuss micro-expressions, blinking, and tone, you'll see how instant imitation creates effortless influence and connection. Fact 48. Saying, "You're right," makes people trust you. Instantly. Few phrases have such immediate effect as "you're right." It's almost magical in social psychology. A simple acknowledgement validates the other person, signaling that their perception or opinion is understood and respected. That tiny moment of validation triggers trust almost automatically. It's not about agreement, it's about recognition. People respond positively when their thoughts are reflected back to them. "You're right" is a verbal nod that aligns with the brain's desire for acknowledgement. Suddenly the other person feels safer, more open, and more likely to cooperate. Later, when we explore mirroring, tone, and subtle gestures, you'll see how verbal acknowledgement interacts with body language to create an even stronger sense of trust. Small phrases like this carry more power than most realize. Fact 49. Manipulators never ask direct questions. Only guiding ones. Here's a tactic that's almost invisible until you notice it. Manipulators avoid direct questions. Instead, they ask guiding questions that shape answers without forcing them. Instead of "did you do X?" they'll ask, "how did that feel when X happened?" or "what made you decide that?" These questions subtly direct thought. The brain fills in the gaps while feeling in control, unaware of the steering. It's not coercion, it's guidance. Direct questions trigger defense. Guiding questions invite reflection, agreement, and confession. Later, when we explore pauses, tone, and nodding, you'll see how question style interacts with subtle cues to maximize influence. The mind responds willingly, thinking it chose the response freely. Fact 50. People avoid eye contact. When hiding pleasure, not guilt. Most people assume that avoiding eye contact signals guilt, but that's only part of the story. People actually look away when hiding pleasure or secret enjoyment. The brain subconsciously shields emotions that feel vulnerable, even positive ones. Think about mischievous smiles, private jokes, or secret delight. The brain instinctively avoids eye contact to protect that pleasure from immediate judgment or exposure. Guilt, on the other hand, often shows up in micro-expressions or subtle fidgeting rather than avoidance. Later, when we discuss micro-expressions, mirroring, and tone, you'll notice how eye contact, or its absence, communicates far more than words. Avoidance isn't always shame. Sometimes it's enjoyment carefully hidden. Fact 51. You can tell someone is lying by their timing, not their words. It's not always what people say that gives them away. it's when they say it. The timing of words, pauses, and responses often signals truthfulness more than content. A slight hesitation, a delayed answer, or a rushed reply can reveal whether someone is being genuine. The brain notices patterns. Lies take extra effort to fabricate, so timing subtly slips. People might pause too long while thinking of a story, or respond too quickly to sound confident. The words themselves might sound plausible, but the rhythm, that tiny difference, triggers a gut sense of doubt. This is why skilled interrogators, negotiators, and influencers pay attention to pacing. They observe not just what's said, but how it's delivered. Later, when we cover mirroring, micro-expressions and pauses, you'll see how timing interacts with body language to make truth more visible than words ever could. Fact 52. You trust people who share tiny flaws. Perfection rarely builds trust. Surprisingly, humans feel closer to those who reveal small imperfections. Sharing minor mistakes or quirks signals authenticity. The brain interprets it as honesty and openness. Suddenly you feel safer, more connected, and more willing to believe the rest of their story. Think about casual conversation. A tiny self-deprecating comment, "I always forget my keys," makes a person feel relatable. It reduces distance, creates empathy, and invites trust. This doesn't mean oversharing major flaws, but little, humanizing details make people feel the other is real, not rehearsed or manipulative. Later, when we explore mirroring, tone, and repetition, you'll notice how these small confessions combine with other cues to make influence subtle but powerful. Trust often begins with tiny imperfections. Fact 53. People judge honesty by how someone breathes. Breathing is more revealing than most realize. Rapid, shallow breaths can indicate tension, anxiety, or uncertainty. Slow, steady breathing suggests calmness and confidence. Without words, the brain picks up on these patterns, forming judgments about honesty and reliability. Even small changes, a quick intake of air, a delayed exhale, or a regular rhythm, can influence perception. People subconsciously assess whether someone is comfortable with their own statements, interpreting breathing as a subtle truth cue. Later, when we discuss pauses, micro-expressions, and tone, you'll see how breathing interacts with other nonverbal signals to shape judgments. The mind notices more than words. It notices rhythm, flow, and subtle energy. Fact 54. Humans reveal truth. When emotionally overwhelmed, emotions bypass filters. When someone is emotionally overloaded, whether from joy, stress, or surprise, the brain often leaks information that would normally be hidden. Rapid speech, trembling hands, flushed skin, or inadvertent admissions can surface in moments of intensity. Think about situations where someone gets unexpectedly angry, anxious, or excited. Their emotional reaction can reveal intentions, thoughts, or secrets without deliberate effort. That's why high emotion moments are prime for uncovering truth. Defenses are weakened, and the mind prioritizes expression over concealment. Later, when we explore micro-expressions, mirroring, and pauses, you'll see how emotional intensity interacts with subtle cues to reveal more than planned statements ever could. Fact 55. People obey calm anger more than explosive anger. It may seem counterintuitive, but calm anger commands more compliance than shouting or explosive reactions. A composed, controlled expression of displeasure signals focus, authority, and self-control, which the brain respects. Explosive anger often triggers fear or defensiveness, creating resistance instead of obedience. Think about tense discussions. Someone who expresses firm, measured dissatisfaction draws attention and compliance. The mind interprets calm anger as serious and intentional, whereas explosive anger feels reactive and unpredictable. Later, when we discuss tone, pauses, and micro-expressions, you'll notice how controlled emotional expression can subtly guide behavior without overt force. Calm influence often outweighs loud intimidation. Fact 56. Your mind protects you by deleting traumatic details. The brain has a clever defense mechanism. It hides painful details to protect you. Traumatic memories aren't always erased completely, but the mind removes fragments to reduce emotional distress. You might recall an event vaguely, skipping over the sharpest moments, and that's intentional. Think about a stressful accident or an emotionally intense experience. The memory is there, but your mind softens the edges. It's not lying, it's self-preservation. By masking the most distressing details, the brain helps you function without being overwhelmed by trauma. Later, when we explore confidence, timing, and suggestion, you'll see how these gaps can be influenced. If the mind forgets parts, it sometimes fills in the blanks, which can be guided subtly. Understanding this helps explain why memory is both powerful and fragile, especially under influence. Fact 57. Manipulators make you doubt your memory, not your logic. Skilled manipulators rarely attack your reasoning directly. Instead, they target memory. They subtly challenge what you remember, not what you know, making you question your own recollection. This approach is far more effective because the brain trusts logic but can be confused by inconsistent memory. Imagine a friend insisting something happened differently than you recall. You start second-guessing yourself. The details you once trusted feel unreliable. Manipulators use this tactic to guide perception without blatant confrontation. Your mind thinks, maybe I misremembered, while your logic feels untouched. Later, when we discuss timing, pauses, and tone, you'll notice how memory manipulation combines with subtle cues to steer beliefs. The brain is naturally vulnerable to these gentle nudges, especially in social contexts. Fact 58. People confess more. After hearing someone else confess, confession is contagious. Hearing someone else admit a truth, even a small one, triggers a psychological release in others. Your mind thinks, if they can reveal it, it's safe for me too. That's why shared confessions often snowball. One admission opens the floodgates for others. Think about group settings, stories, or intimate conversations. Someone shares a secret, and others start opening up almost automatically. The brain senses safety, social alignment, and mutual honesty. Confession becomes cooperative, not coercive. Later, when we cover pauses, mirroring, and tone, you'll see how this principle works hand in hand with subtle influence. Creating the sense of shared openness encourages disclosure naturally. Fact 59. Fear sharpens memory, but distorts. Meaning fear is a double-edged sword for memory. When the brain experiences fear, attention spikes, details become vivid, and moments feel unforgettable. Yet, while recall is sharp, the meaning of events can be distorted. Context and interpretation often warp under the pressure of emotion. Imagine a sudden frightening experience. You remember faces, sounds, and details clearly, but your brain may exaggerate, misattribute, or misinterpret motives. Fear prioritizes survival cues over accuracy. That's why stories of fear feel real, but sometimes shift subtly over time. Later, when we explore emotional contagion, timing, and pauses, you'll notice how fear influences perception and memory simultaneously. The mind remembers intensely, but the story it tells itself isn't always exact. Fact 60. Your mind creates false memories to fill emotional gaps. Sometimes, the brain fabricates memories to maintain emotional balance. When details are missing or experiences feel incomplete, the mind fills in gaps with plausible, emotionally consistent material. These false memories aren't lies. They're the brain's way of making sense of life. Think about vague recollections from childhood or fragmented, stressful events. Your mind might insert characters, dialogue, or outcomes that feel real, even though they didn't happen exactly that way. Emotion drives the creation. keeping the narrative coherent and the psyche intact. Later, when we discuss repetition, confidence, and subtle suggestion, you'll see how these gaps can be influenced. Manipulators exploit memory's flexibility, guiding what the brain fills in without overt pressure. The mind is always working to make sense, even if it bends reality along the way. Fact 61. People trust slower talkers, but obey faster talkers. It's a curious quirk of human perception. Slow speech breeds trust, while fast speech triggers obedience. When someone speaks slowly, enunciating each word, the brain interprets it as thoughtful, careful, and sincere. We subconsciously feel they're more reliable. Now, fast talk has a different effect. Rapid speech demands attention and compresses information into a burst. The brain responds by following instructions more quickly, almost reflexively. Obedience increases not because of logic, but because the mind is swept along by pace. Imagine listening to instructions from two people. One explains slowly, pausing for clarity. You trust their knowledge. The other fires commands rapidly. You follow automatically, almost without thinking. Timing, rhythm, and delivery influence compliance as much as content. Later, when we explore mirroring, pauses, and micro-expressions, you'll notice how speed interacts with other subtle cues to guide thought and action. Speech tempo is more than words. It's an invisible signal the brain can't ignore. Fact 62. Guilt shows in the feet before the face. Most people focus on facial expressions when judging honesty, but guilt often starts lower. Subtle foot movements, shifting weight, tapping or pointing away, can appear before the face betrays emotion. The brain signals tension through posture first, and only later do expressions reveal the inner state. Think about tense conversations. Someone might look calm, but their feet are restless. That restlessness signals unease or guilt. Manipulators, investigators, or even friends unconsciously notice these micro-cues. Your attention may be drawn to the face, but the feet often tell the truth first. Later, when we discuss micro-expressions, mirroring, and pauses, you'll see how subtle body cues combine with voice and rhythm to reveal hidden emotions. Feet often give away more than we realize. Fact 63. People avoid asking for clarification when intimidated. Intimidation doesn't just affect emotions, it affects behavior. When someone feels pressure, whether from authority, confidence, or social dominance, they often hesitate to ask questions. Their brain wants to avoid appearing ignorant or challenging the other person. That hesitation is subtle but revealing. People nod along, agree without understanding, or give incomplete responses. Even if confusion grows internally, the mind prioritizes social safety over clarity. This is why confident or imposing figures can guide decisions effortlessly, simply by appearing unshakable. Later, when we explore timing, tone, and mirroring, you'll notice how intimidation interacts with subtle cues to influence behavior. The brain often obeys quietly, rather than ask for clarification, making control almost invisible. Fact 64. You copy the breathing patterns of people you like. Humans mirror each other more than we realize, and breathing is no exception. When you like someone, your inhale and exhale subtly synchronize with theirs. This happens unconsciously, creating connection, empathy, and trust. It's almost instantaneous. Slow, steady breaths from one person prompt calmer breathing in another. Rapid or tense breathing can also be mirrored, spreading anxiety or excitement. The brain treats synchronization as social bonding, making us feel closer to those whose rhythm we follow. Later, when we cover micro-expressions, tone, and pauses, you'll see how breathing interacts with gestures, eye contact, and subtle cues to create a sense of rapport. Mirroring is a silent language that builds trust without words. Fact 65. People overshare when they feel seen but not looked at. There's a delicate balance in communication. People open up most when they feel acknowledged but not scrutinized. Eye contact that's too intense can shut down conversation, but gentle recognition, subtle nods, slight attention, or indirect focus encourages sharing. This creates a sense of safety. The brain interprets it as understanding without judgment, allowing thoughts, secrets, and emotions to flow naturally. Oversharing often happens in these moments because the mind feels connected but unthreatened. Later, when we explore dim light, whispering, and mirroring, you'll see how this seen but not stared at dynamic interacts with subtle cues to create influence. People reveal more when the environment feels supportive, even unconsciously. Fact 66. Humans trust people who use their name. Often. There's something quietly powerful about hearing your own name. When someone uses it often in conversation, it creates a subtle connection. The brain interprets it as attention, personalization, and acknowledgement, instantly boosting trust. Think about casual chats or meetings. When someone says, "Emma, I see what you mean," or "Emma, what do you think?" you feel noticed. That small recognition signals relevance and importance. Even if the interaction is brief, your mind registers familiarity and personal attention. Manipulators know this instinctively. They sprinkle names throughout requests or discussions to build rapport. It's not about flattery. It's about creating a sense of intimacy. Later, when we cover tone, pauses, and mirroring, you'll notice how combining name usage with subtle cues makes people open up and cooperate more willingly. Fact 67. Humor disarms suspicion. Almost instantly, laughter has a surprising effect on the brain. It lowers defenses. Humor creates comfort, releases tension, and signals friendliness. Even brief jokes or light comments can disarm suspicion and make someone more receptive to influence. Think about tense conversations. A well-timed joke doesn't just entertain, it shifts emotional balance. The brain relaxes, social barriers drop, and trust grows. Humor signals that there's no immediate threat, making the listener more open to ideas, suggestions, or storytelling. Later, when we explore tone, micro-expressions, and mirroring, you'll notice how humor works alongside subtle influence techniques. It's one of the easiest ways to lower guard and guide perception without anyone realizing it. Fact 68. A soft no confuses people more than a firm no. It sounds counterintuitive, but a gentle refusal can be more persuasive than a strong one. A soft no leaves space for interpretation, hesitation, or negotiation. The brain doesn't respond defensively. Instead, it searches for meaning, often bending to the suggestion behind the no. Think about conversations where someone says, "Well, no," with a calm, measured tone. It sparks curiosity. People read into it, trying to understand why, and sometimes even comply to test the boundaries. Firm no's create resistance. Soft no's invite exploration. Later, when we discuss tone, pauses, and subtle gestures, you'll see how this approach interacts with timing and body language to influence outcomes quietly. The mind fills in gaps, often to the speaker's advantage. Fact 69. People project their intentions onto others. Ever notice how people assume others think like them? That's projection at work. When someone wants, fears, or plans something, they often assume others have similar intentions or motives. It's not conscious. The brain simplifies social reasoning by using its own perspective as a shortcut. This explains misunderstandings, assumptions, and subtle manipulations. Someone planning to lie may believe everyone else would lie in the same situation, even if that's false. Projection also makes people easier to influence. If they think you share their intentions, they're more likely to cooperate. Later, when we cover mirroring, micro-expressions, and tone, you'll notice how projection interacts with subtle cues to shape belief and behavior. Our minds constantly read others through the lens of ourselves, sometimes to surprising effect. Fact 70. The brain senses insincerity through tone. Alone words matter, but tone matters more. The brain can detect insincerity or dishonesty through vocal cues, pitch, rhythm, emphasis, often before the listener consciously registers what's being said. A subtle shift in tone can trigger doubt, even if the content is truthful. Think about conversations where something feels off. You can't always explain why, but your intuition flags it. That's your brain analysing subtle voice patterns, hesitation, flatness, or unnatural inflection. Tone carries emotion, intention, and authenticity far more efficiently than words alone. Later, when we explore pauses, micro-expressions, and mirroring, you'll see how tone interacts with other subtle signals to reveal truth or deception. The mind listens for more than words. It listens for intention behind them. Fact 71. People confess more. When music is quiet and slow. Music sets a subtle emotional stage. Slow, quiet tunes create an environment where the mind feels safe, reflective, and relaxed. Under these conditions, people are more likely to open up and confess thoughts or feelings they might otherwise hide. Think about late-night conversations or soft background music in a cafe. The gentle rhythm lowers tension, reduces mental defenses, and signals a calm environment. Your brain associates slow tempos with safety, which encourages honesty. Even minor admissions flow easier when the atmosphere feels supportive rather than rushed or loud. Manipulators and influencers sometimes use this unknowingly or intentionally. A calm, quiet setting primes the mind to share, trust, and respond. Later, when we discuss dim lighting, tone, and pauses, you'll notice how subtle environmental cues amplify this effect. Music doesn't just entertain, it shapes honesty. Fact 72. You trust people who pause. Before answering, ever notice that someone who hesitates briefly before replying seems more credible? That pause signals thoughtfulness, reflection, and deliberation. The brain interprets it as careful consideration rather than impulsiveness, which builds trust. Conversely, instant answers can feel rehearsed or careless. A well-timed pause demonstrates that the person isn't rushing to mislead or bluff, they're engaging seriously with the question. Even micro-pauses, a split second long, can convey depth and sincerity. Later, when we cover timing, tone, and subtle gestures, you'll see how this technique interacts with other cues to guide perception. Pausing isn't just about words, it's about letting the mind sense intention behind them. Fact 73. Manipulators. Make you feel responsible for their emotions. A subtle but powerful tactic is emotional redirection. Manipulators often frame situations so you feel accountable for their feelings, guilt, sadness, or anger. Your brain naturally responds, trying to resolve the emotional tension and ease discomfort. Imagine a friend acting upset after a simple disagreement. Instead of expressing their emotions neutrally, they make you feel as though your actions caused it. You bend to reason with them, apologize or adjust behavior, even if you did nothing wrong. The mind instinctively seeks harmony, and manipulators exploit that instinct. Later, when we explore mirroring, tone, and micro-expressions, you'll notice how emotional cues combined with subtle messaging make influence feel natural and unavoidable. Feeling responsible isn't about logic, it's about empathy and instinct. Fact 74. People learn your patterns. Faster than you think. Your habits, gestures, and routines are like a code the brain deciphers quickly. Humans pick up on subtle patterns. How you speak, breathe, or gesture, sometimes before you're even aware. Repetition makes these cues predictable, allowing others to anticipate your thoughts and reactions. This is why first impressions, subtle behaviors, and repeated actions are so influential. Observers can unconsciously map your patterns, responding in ways that steer behavior or conversation. Even small, repeated signals like nodding, pacing, or tone adjustments are noticed far quicker than you think. Later, when we discuss mirroring, micro-expressions, and timing, you'll see how pattern recognition is central to social influence. People often act based on what they expect you'll do next. Fact 75. Humans. Fear rejection. More than pain. It's not physical pain that drives social behavior, it's the fear of rejection. Human brains are wired to prioritize social acceptance. Exclusion, disapproval, or ridicule triggers anxiety far more deeply than minor physical discomfort. Think about subtle social cues. A frown, silence, or hesitation from others can feel more threatening than a small scrape or bruise. The mind reacts strongly to potential social loss because belonging is tied to survival and emotional stability. Later, when we explore mirroring, tone, and pauses, you'll notice how the fear of rejection shapes responses, decision-making, and disclosure. Social influence often outweighs physical consequences because the mind prioritizes connection. Fact 76. People obey instructions more when they're slightly confused. It might seem strange, but a little confusion can make someone more compliant. When the brain is unsure, it seeks guidance, relying on external cues to make sense of the situation. Instructions feel like a safe anchor amidst uncertainty. Think about following directions in a new game or software. If everything is clear, you might question advice or explore alternatives. But when details are slightly confusing, your mind defaults to authority, assuming that someone giving instructions knows the right path. Manipulators often exploit this without being obvious. They introduce minor ambiguity, then present guidance, and people follow almost automatically. Later, when we discuss timing, tone, and pauses, you'll see how small gaps in clarity combine with subtle cues to influence decisions smoothly. Fact 77. Your brain can misread kindness as manipulation. Human brains are cautious by design. Sometimes an overly helpful gesture or compliment is interpreted as ulterior motive. Even genuine kindness can trigger suspicion if it seems unexpected, overly polished, or strategically timed. Imagine someone offering advice or praise unexpectedly. Part of your brain evaluates, why are they doing this? What do they want? That instant analysis is natural. The mind protects against being exploited. But it also means authentic goodwill can be misread as manipulation. Later, when we explore tone, pauses, and micro-expressions, you'll notice how context shapes interpretation. The brain evaluates not just words, but intent behind them, sometimes creating doubt where none exists. Fact 78. Humans assume unfamiliar faces are unfriendly. There's an instinctive bias in human perception. Strangers are treated cautiously. The brain automatically interprets unfamiliar faces as potentially unfriendly, until proven otherwise. This isn't paranoia. It's an evolutionary safeguard designed to prevent harm from unknown individuals. Even subtle facial cues, posture, or micro-expressions are scanned quickly. The brain assesses threat and trustworthiness in seconds. Smiles, eye contact, and tone can override initial caution, but the first impression often sets the baseline. Later, when we cover mirroring, micro-expressions, and tone, you'll notice how initial biases influence trust, honesty, and openness. Humans are wired to be cautious with the unfamiliar, even if logic suggests friendliness. Fact 79. People betray themselves. Through micro-hesitations, tiny pauses and hesitations reveal more than words ever could. When someone is uncertain, anxious, or hiding information, micro-hesitations, brief stutters, word fillers, or delayed responses appear unconsciously. These split-second signals betray intentions, thoughts, or feelings. For instance, someone asked a simple question might pause for just a fraction of a second before answering. The brain registers tension, uncertainty, or concealment, even if the content seems truthful. Micro-hesitations act like fingerprints of the mind, revealing what words try to hide. Later, when we discuss timing, tone, and body language, you'll see how these subtle pauses interact with other cues, making hidden truths visible without overt questioning. Fact 80. You trust people with open palms more than closed hands. Body language speaks louder than words. Open palms signal honesty, openness, and non-threat. Closed fists, hidden hands, or crossed arms create subtle tension and suspicion. Your brain interprets openness as trustworthiness instinctively. Even brief glances at open palms during conversation can increase cooperation, receptivity, and willingness to believe. It's an ancient, unconscious signal that gestures safety. Manipulators often know this, consciously or not, using open-handed gestures to build rapport. Later, when we cover mirroring, tone, and micro-expressions, you'll see how hand gestures combine with other subtle cues to enhance influence and trust. Open palms are silent communication, but extremely persuasive. Fact 81. People like someone more. When they share a secret, secrets create intimacy. When someone confides in you, your brain perceives trust, vulnerability, and connection. That small disclosure triggers a subconscious response. Liking and empathy increase, even if the secret is minor or trivial. Think about casual conversation. A friend whispers a quirky habit or a small confession. Instantly you feel closer. Your brain interprets it as proof of authenticity, signaling that this person sees you as safe enough to reveal something personal. That tiny moment of sharing builds rapport faster than compliments or small talk ever could. Manipulators know this instinctively. A well-timed confession can make people open up, agree, or align emotionally. Later, when we explore mirroring, tone, and pauses, you'll notice how the act of sharing secrets combines with subtle cues to deepen influence naturally. Fact 82. Your mind values emotional certainty over logical accuracy. Humans prioritize feelings over facts more than we realize. Even if logic tells you one thing, strong emotions can override reasoning. The brain craves emotional certainty, understanding how you feel, and sometimes sacrifices factual accuracy to maintain that sense of clarity. Imagine being reassured about a stressful situation. Even if the information is only partially correct, the brain focuses on the comfort and stability it brings. Emotional certainty reduces anxiety, while logic without emotional context often feels insufficient. Later, when we cover tone, mirroring, and pauses, you'll see how this principle interacts with subtle cues. Influencers and manipulators rely on emotional framing because the mind responds first to feelings, then to facts. Fact 83. Manipulators overload you with choices to create stress. Too many options can be paralyzing. When someone is presented with multiple paths, decisions, or scenarios at once, the brain experiences stress and fatigue. Manipulators exploit this. The overload makes people more susceptible to guidance, defaulting to the simplest or most suggested choice. Think about situations like complex forms, sales offers, or even social choices. When too many possibilities exist, the mind abandons thorough evaluation. People tend to follow recommendations, adopt suggestions, or agree quickly just to reduce mental strain. Later, when we explore timing, tone, and pauses, you'll notice how choice overload works hand in hand with subtle cues to steer decisions. Complexity doesn't just confuse, it increases influence. Fact 84. Humans judge. Danger by someone's eyes before anything else. The eyes are an early warning system. Long before words or gestures, humans instinctively evaluate threat by looking at the eyes. Pupils, gaze direction, and micro-expressions convey intent, focus, and emotional state almost instantly. Even in crowded or chaotic environments, Your brain prioritizes eye information. It assesses danger, trust, and attention in milliseconds. That's why subtle changes in eye contact or expression can evoke instinctive responses before any conscious thought. Later, when we cover micro-expressions, mirroring, and tone, you'll see how eye cues interact with other subtle signals to influence trust, fear, and compliance. The eyes truly speak first, long before words or logic. Fact 85. People trust those who mimic their vocabulary. Language creates connection. When someone adopts your words, phrases, or terminology, your brain interprets it as alignment and familiarity. Suddenly you feel understood, and trust increases. It's subtle. A few repeated words, phrases, or ways of framing sentences can make a huge difference in social dynamics. Mimicry signals attentiveness and empathy, making people more receptive without realizing why. Later, when we explore tone, pauses, and mirroring, you'll see how language mimicry combines with other cues to enhance influence. People respond naturally to those who speak like them. It's a silent bond that shapes trust effortlessly. Fact 86. People admit guilt. When they feel understood, guilt is heavy, but feeling understood can lighten the load. Enough that people reveal what they've been hiding. When someone listens with empathy, without judgment or interruption, the brain interprets it as safety. Suddenly the mind feels it can release secrets without risk. Think about a conversation with a close friend. Simply acknowledging their feelings, nodding, reflecting, or paraphrasing can prompt confession. The guilt isn't gone, but the weight feels manageable, and people open up naturally. It's not coercion, it's psychological comfort. Later, when we discuss mirroring, tone, and pauses, you'll see how subtle acknowledgement enhances openness. Feeling understood is one of the strongest triggers for truth-telling, even without direct questioning. Fact 87. Silence forces people to reveal what they fear most. Silence is surprisingly persuasive. When a pause stretches longer than expected, the brain reacts instinctively. We hate empty space. In that moment, thoughts and fears rise to fill the void. People often reveal truths or worries just to end the tension. Imagine someone hesitating in a conversation. Instead of filling the silence yourself, you let it linger. Often, they'll start explaining, confessing, or justifying, sometimes more than they intended. The mind interprets silence as patience and attention, creating a subtle pressure to disclose. Later, when we explore tone, micro-expressions, and mirroring, you'll notice how strategic pauses guide conversations effortlessly. Silence isn't empty, it's a tool that lets the mind surface hidden thoughts. Fact 88. You trust people who repeat your words back to you. Repetition is reassurance. When someone mirrors your words, the brain interprets it as understanding and alignment. Suddenly you feel recognized and validated, and trust increases. Even simple paraphrasing, "so you're saying," makes a big difference. It signals that the other person is listening actively and thinking in sync with you. Your brain responds with comfort, lowering defenses and increasing openness. Later, when we discuss mirroring, tone, and pauses, you'll see how repeating words works hand in hand with subtle cues to create influence naturally. People respond effortlessly to reflection because it feels like connection. Fact 89. Humans. Bond. Faster. Under shared discomfort. Discomfort can create unexpected closeness. When two people experience stress, mild fear, or challenge together, the brain interprets it as a shared experience. That shared struggle sparks empathy, connection, and trust faster than casual interaction. Think about being on a crowded elevator, dealing with a stressful task, or navigating an awkward situation. Mutual tension aligns emotions, and people often share more, help each other, or cooperate more readily. The mind perceives allies in shared hardship, forming bonds quickly. Later, when we explore tone, micro-expressions, and mirroring, you'll notice how shared discomfort amplifies influence. Connection isn't only about comfort, sometimes it's forged in small struggles. Fact 90. People accept lies that give them relief. The brain craves emotional comfort. When a lie provides relief, reducing fear, guilt, or anxiety, people accept it willingly. They may even justify it subconsciously because the emotional reward outweighs the need for truth. Think about stories that soften bad news or explanations that reduce worry. Even if you sense inconsistency, your mind prefers peace over discomfort. This is why hopeful or reassuring falsehoods spread easily. The emotional benefit matters more than accuracy. Later, when we cover tone, pauses, and mirroring, you'll notice how small cues combine with this instinct to make influence feel natural. People often choose relief over scrutiny, even without realizing it. Fact 91. You reveal more. After saying, "I shouldn't say this." There's something almost magical about that phrase. "I shouldn't say this." It triggers a psychological shortcut in the listener's brain. Suddenly, what comes next feels more truthful, vulnerable, and valuable, and the speaker often can't resist revealing more. It works because the brain interprets the statement as a hint of hidden information. People naturally lean in, mentally preparing to receive a secret. At the same time, the speaker feels a subtle push to continue, spilling details they might otherwise keep hidden. Imagine a friend leaning close, whispering, "I shouldn't say this," but you immediately pay more attention, and they often share more than planned. Later, when we cover pauses, tone, and mirroring, you'll notice how this tiny nudge interacts with other cues to increase openness effortlessly. Fact 92. Humans use laughter to hide emotional pain. Laughter isn't always joy. Often it's a mask, a defense mechanism to hide discomfort, embarrassment, or stress. The brain uses humor as a shield, signaling everything's fine while internally processing emotional tension. Think about awkward moments or personal confessions. People laugh to diffuse pressure or avoid vulnerability. Listeners may perceive confidence or levity, but underneath the mind is handling stress or pain. Recognizing this subtle cue can reveal more than words ever could. Later, when we explore micro-expressions, tone, and mirroring, you'll notice how laughter interacts with body language to hint at hidden emotions. The mind often laughs to cover feelings, and understanding this gives insight into true emotional states. Fact 93. The brain confuses dominance with competence. Confidence often outweighs expertise in the human brain. Someone who appears dominant through posture, tone, or decisiveness is frequently assumed competent, even if their actual knowledge is limited. Imagine a meeting where two people present ideas. The loudest, most assured speaker is often perceived as the most skilled, while quieter, knowledgeable individuals may be overlooked. Dominance signals certainty, and the brain equates certainty with capability. Later, when we discuss posture, tone, and pauses, you'll notice how apparent dominance interacts with other subtle cues to guide perception. People instinctively trust authority signals sometimes more than facts. Fact 94. People obey. When you lower your voice, not raise it. Lowering your voice creates authority. The brain interprets calm, measured speech as control, confidence, and focus. Raising your voice, even with emphasis, often triggers resistance or defensiveness instead. Think about instructions in a tense situation. Someone speaking softly but firmly can command attention more effectively than someone shouting. The mind responds to stability and composure, not volume. Later, when we explore pauses, tone, and micro-expressions, you'll see how voice modulation interacts with other subtle cues to influence behavior effortlessly. Calm persuasion outperforms forceful insistence. Fact 95. You can influence someone by adjusting your posture. Posture isn't just about comfort, it's communication. Leaning forward signals engagement, openness, and interest. Standing tall conveys authority and confidence. Crossing arms may suggest defensiveness. Your brain reads posture before words, forming judgments instantly. Even subtle adjustments, uncrossing legs, tilting slightly, or mirroring the other person, can increase trust and rapport. Observing and modifying posture allows influence without speaking a single word. Later, when we cover mirroring, tone, and pauses, you'll notice how posture combines with subtle cues to guide perception. Influence begins with the body, long before words arrive. Fact 96. Humans follow confident gestures. Even without instructions, gestures speak louder than words. Even without explicit instructions, confident body movements, a pointed hand, a clear nod, or an assured step, guide people naturally. The brain interprets certainty in motion as a signal of competence and direction. Think about a team setting. A leader raises a hand decisively, or points toward an object with certainty. People instinctively follow, even if no one has said a word. Confidence acts as an unspoken command, quietly directing attention and behavior. Later, when we explore posture, tone, and mirroring, you'll notice how confident gestures combine with subtle cues to influence without overt authority. The mind responds to certainty, often unconsciously, before logic even kicks in. Fact 97. People trust predictable behavior, even when it's dangerous. Humans crave predictability. The brain prefers familiar patterns, even if the outcome is risky or harmful. Predictability signals stability, and stability feels safer than the unknown, sometimes overriding common sense. Imagine a situation where someone repeats familiar habits, even questionable ones. Observers may trust them, follow their lead, or comply, simply because the patterns feel consistent. The mind equates regularity with reliability, regardless of risk. Later, when we discuss mirroring, tone, and pauses, you'll see how predictable cues combine with subtle social signals to increase influence. People often trust the familiar, even when it's not the wisest choice. Fact 98. Your mind fills. Silence with imaginary fears. Silence is powerful. The brain hates emptiness and instinctively fills it with scenarios, often fears, to prepare for potential threats. A quiet room, a pause in conversation, or a long gap can make your mind imagine danger or anticipate negative outcomes. Think about waiting alone in a dark hallway or sitting through an awkward pause. Your mind may create tension, worry, or imagined risks, even if nothing threatening exists. The brain prefers a false alarm over unpreparedness, so it invents possibilities. Later, when we explore tone, pauses, and mirroring, you'll notice how silence interacts with emotional triggers. Strategic pauses can guide thinking subtly, letting the mind reveal or create responses naturally. Fact 99. People reveal their priorities. During tiny frustrations, minor annoyances are revealing. When people encounter small irritations, their reactions often expose what matters most to them. The brain drops filters during frustration, allowing true priorities and values to surface. Imagine someone waiting in line, or dealing with a slow computer. Their patience, tone, and focus can highlight what they truly care about: efficiency, fairness, respect, or control. These micro-moments often reveal more than hours of calm conversation. Later, when we discuss micro-expressions, pauses, and tone, you'll see how observing subtle reactions during minor frustrations provides insight into hidden motives and values. Small reactions often speak louder than planned statements. Fact 100. Humans feel safest with someone who speaks softly at night. There's something instinctively calming about soft, measured voices in low-light or nighttime settings. The brain associates quiet speech with safety, intimacy, and non-threat. It's why lullabies, whispered advice, or nighttime conversations feel comforting. Even subtle changes in tone can reduce stress, encourage trust, and make people more receptive. A soft-spoken individual at night becomes a focal point of reassurance, guiding attention and cooperation naturally. Later, when we explore pauses, mirroring, and posture, you'll notice how the combination of gentle tone and timing creates a powerful influence. Calm, quiet communication at night taps into deep instincts for safety and trust,